Meh.
On June 16, 1992, Tim Burton's Batman Returns is released in the US. The film was a follow-up to the 1989's blockbuster Batman. Burton did not initially want to direct another Batman film until the studio promised the director more creative control with the sequel. With Michael Keaton slated to reprise his role as the Dark Knight, Burton set out to find two actors that could play the role of the villains in the film, Penguin and Catwoman. This was a tall order due to how iconic Jack Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker in the previous film had already become.
Tell me something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it.
Screenwriter Daniel Waters wrote the Penguin character already with Danny DeVito in mind to play the role. However, for the role of Catwoman, dozens of actresses auditioned for the role, including Jennifer Jason Leigh, Sean Young, and Bridget Fonda. Hell, even Madonna and Cher were considered for the role. After only one table read, the part went to Michelle Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer's performance was groundbreaking, which introduced the character of Selina Kyle as a beaten-down, timid secretary, only to become a sexy and powerful, confident badass who stole every scene she was in.
Meow.
Pfeiffer's performance became so memorable, in fact, the studio wanted to immediately greenlight a standalone Catwoman movie. Burton and Pfeiffer both dropped out of the project, relegating the film to stay in development hell until 2001, when Halle Berry was awarded the starring part. The film was directed by French visual effects supervisor Pitoff. This film is considered by many as one of the worst films of all time and didn't even come close to making back its $100 million budget, grossing only $82 million at the worldwide box office. This film was a mess. Barry's performance was laughable, the visual effects were deplorable, especially coming from a director with a visual effects background, and all the fun and female empowering vibe from Pfeiffer's Catwoman were replaced with dumbass scenes full of cat puns and cartoonish action.
You should come back anytime. I'm always here.
Watching this movie was a chore, and I would not recommend it even as it's like so bad it's good. After watching this shit show, however, I was inspired to create a new commander deck that encapsulates the character of Catwoman's burglarish nature. Let's talk about the Inquisitor herself, Thada Adel. Yes, I get it. Huge flavor fail for being a fish person. Not only is she dressed in an almost identical getup as Barry's Catwoman, but mechanically, this general is spot on. Almost seemingly designed after the feline femme fatale, Thada Adel Inquisitor is a 2/2 Merfolk Rogue for 1 blue. She has the island walk ability. For all you millennials out there, having any type of land walk meant that the creature was unblockable as long as your opponent had that specific land on the battlefield. In this case, if they controlled an island. Where Thada really shines is whenever she deals damage to a player, you may search that player's library for an artifact card and exile it. Until end of turn, you may play that exiled card. Being able to drop her out early and start swinging leads to all sorts of fun thievery. In the early turns, if you could connect with Thada, you can start acquiring some mana rocks like Soul Ring to start ramping into the meatier and juicier treasures that your opponent no doubt has included in their deck. This deck is surprisingly consistent, efficient, and dare I say, easy on the budget. But as always, this is not the EDH Rec version of this deck, just how I enjoy playing it. So starting with the creatures, Tideshaper Mystic and Tidal Warrior. These two 1/1 for 1 blue transform a land your opponent controls into an island, clearing a path for Thada to connect unscathed. Looter Ilkor has evasion of its own with Shadow and can loot you a card when it connects with an opponent. Thassa, God of the Seafood Buffet, becomes a 5/5 indestructible beat stick when Devotion is activated. Also allows you to scry every time and grants a creature unblockability for 3 mana. Chasm Stalker A ticking time bomb that explodes into an army of island-walking squid babies. Sounds like I'm back in health class. Foundry Inspector makes our stolen goods cost 1 less. Padim, Console of Innovation. This withered prune with a huge 4 toughness booty grants our pilfered booty hexproof. Also, she rewards us for having the best in show by drawing a card if we control the artifact with or tied with the highest converted mana cost on the battlefield on each of our upkeeps. Thalicos Deceiver. Another elusive shadow creature that can permanently steal one of our opponent's creatures if it connects with their face. We are not only stealing objects, but living things as well. Vizier of Many Faces. A clone that could come back from the dead and impersonate another creature again. This is the scariest mime ever. Sun Quan, Lord of Wu. This 6-costed 4/4 basically should read all creatures you control can't be blocked. Trust me, your opponent's creatures won't have horsemanship. Trust me. Arcanus the Omnipotent is a popular mono blue commander that gets a spot here in the 99 due to his card drawing capabilities. Royal Elemental is a glass cannon that will die on sight. However, if your opponent lets this thing live for some reason, you will take control of every creature on the board very quickly. Oblivion Sower is here to gain control of our opponent's lands and help us ramp. Steel Hellkite is a much needed means to outright destroy things like creatures, artifacts, and enchantments, something a mono blue deck is very bad at. Diluvian Primordial allows you to cast 1 instant or sorcery card from each opponent's graveyard for free. That's right, we want our opponents to know that we can steal anything no matter where it is. Scourge of the Fleets is a Cyclonic Rift on a stick with a 6/6 body. Colossal Whale. Monstros the Whale makes an appearance in the deck to gobble up problem creatures. Vince Lorthos the Tidemaker is one of the most paralyzing haymakers a blue mage can deploy. Stormtide Leviathan is essentially a lockout I win type of card. And finally, Inkwell Leviathan is a huge 7/11 island walking, trampling, bulldozer with Shroud to quickly close out games. Now, onto the enchantments, starting out with Sea's Claim and Spreading Seas. These cards not only make a path for Thada and other island walking creatures, but actually act as a pseudo land destruction card. Your opponent keep a sketchy hand because they got a dual land? Well, you just turn their stomping ground into an island. These 2 spells are like mini Blood Moons, and Spreading Seas even allows you to cantrip. Steel Enchantment acts as a much needed enchantment removal spell. Propaganda stops the bleeding against aggro strategies. Coastal Piracy is an unbelievable draw engine in this style of deck. Control Magic and Steal Artifact. More ways to have the best stuff on the battlefield on your side without having to spend $500 on a commander deck. Thopter Spy Network allows us to build an army for stealing our opponent's things and lets us draw a lot of cards. Finally, Confiscate, Volition Reigns, and Take Possession. See Control Magic. Kicking the non-permanent spells off with Blue's holy trinity of draw spells: Brainstorm, Ponder, and Preordain. Another Island Walk conducive card with Aquatex Will. If we control a Merfolk, we also get to draw a card. Rapid Hybridization and Counterspell for some targeted removal. Merchant Scroll allows us to tutor for our Cyclonic Rift. Fabricate, the demonic tutor for artifacts. Capsize, the OG reoccurring bounce spell, as well as its blood relative Forbid, the counterspell with buyback. Curse of the Swine, the closest thing to mass creature removal you get in mono blue. Pull from Tomorrow, a bad version of Sphinx's Revelation. Foil is a poor man's Force of Will. Wash Out is Cyclonic Rift's little bro. Acquire is bribery for artifacts but doesn't come with that hefty price tag. Gush, a premier mono blue draw spell. Stolen Identity. Make tokens of artifact creatures, then cipher it on to one of your elusive creatures to do it every turn. Knowledge Exploration is a broken ass card in this deck. If our rogue commander is in play, we get to search our opponent's deck for any instant or sorcery and play it for free for the reduced cost of 4 mana. Finally, Dig Through Time is the powerful card selection draw spell that we don't mind exiling useless graveyard cards for. What good thief wouldn't have some tools of her own? So kicking off our own artifacts is Sol Ring. Of course, Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. Worn Power Stone for more ramp. Torpor Orb to shut down ETB strategies. The engine that makes this kitty purr. Quicksilver Fountain. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts a flood counter on a non-island land they control. As long as lands have flood counters on them, they are considered islands. If at the end of any turn all lands in play are islands, all flood counters are removed to start the cycle all over again. This is a fixed Blood Moon and a card that can take over the game, locking out your opponents who are not playing blue. Whisper Silk Cloak to ensure Thada gets through undetected. What's better than stealing your opponent's stuff? Doing it twice with a Fire Shrieker. Bident of Thassa is the second copy of Coastal Piracy and can also force your opponents to some bad attacks. Lastly, when you just have to blow up the world, the Venreal's Disc has got your back. One of the main reasons this deck is so financially forgiving is its high number of basic lands. We are running 26 islands in this deck. The rest are some utility lands, starting with Halimar Depths to set up your draws, Lonely Sandbar, and Desert of the Mindful to cycle and a draw. Moon Ring Island to get some early information of your next draw. Command Tower. Terrain Generator, a ramping land in mono blue. Temple of the False God. Westvale Abbey. Rogue's Passage, so on theme here. Gyre Reach Sanitarium. Terramorphic Expanse. And Ghost Quarter. There you have it, a very cheap but very decent Commander deck based on one of the biggest box office bombs in the history of cinema. I wonder if Halle Berry knew that the best thing that came out of that dumpster fire was inspiring a 33-year-old man-child to build a deck for a card game made for children. Well, thanks for joining me, and if you want to talk about this deck or this horrible-ass movie, we can do so on Twitter @OrzovDone. So until next time, I'll see you